I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Martha Zoller. She's a political commentator and former aide to Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and Senator David Perdue. Martha, thank you so much for joining me.
It is great to be here.
It is great to have you, especially this close to Election Day. As we sit here right now, we are 14 days away, and the race, as we know, is all coming down to those 7 battleground states, one of them being Georgia. A new AJC University of Georgia poll shows former President Donald Trump ahead of Vice President Kamala Harris by 4 points, 2 weeks from Election Day. So you hear that number, what do you think?
Well, it's expected, really, that we're in this situation where people have been hearing the messages. We certainly had a very interesting thing happen the end of July where we got this new candidate. You know, supposedly Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, but the Democrats pushed out their candidate that had 14 million votes and put somebody else in there. So for about 2 months, I would say she had this honeymoon where she got no negative press coverage. She was out there, she was very on message, and you saw the numbers really tighten up. In fact, there were a couple of polls that had Kamala Harris ahead of Donald Trump in Georgia. But I got to tell you, our governor is committed to showing Georgia is not a purple state. He is going to say it is a red state, and he is putting all of his resources behind that, not only to win the presidency, to maybe pick up a seat in the Congress in Georgia, but also to win more seats in the Georgia legislature. So we've got a lot of people working for the same goal. So when I look at that poll, it's not surprising when you dig down into the crosstabs and you see that there are some very key Democratic groups that Kamala Harris has not won over. And it really goes to what you're seeing on the ground right now. And that is Donald Trump is spending time with groups of people that aren't necessarily core voters. He's going to barbershops, he's going to McDonald's, he's going to other places. And then you are seeing her going to her core voters. So she is still shoring up her base, and he is going out and looking for other voters.
You mentioned Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, and as we know, him and Donald Trump had a contentious relationship, to say the least, after the 2020 election. Do you think we're seeing Donald Trump pull ahead in Georgia because Governor Kemp endorsed him, because he was shown with him during the hurricane?
Yeah, and part of it, too, is that Brian Kemp kept the high road the entire time. I mean, he didn't go in and start name calling until his wife got drawn into it. And then he made a little statement, don't bring my family into it. But other than that, I think what happened is that Donald Trump saw that he needed Brian Kemp, and Brian Kemp had done a good job. So they needed that. And also Kemp actually did better in 2022 without the Trump endorsement than he did with the Trump endorsement in 2018. So yes, they have a tenuous relationship, but they're all rowing in the same direction right now. So it's all good.
From what you're saying Georgia is no longer a purple state, Georgia's a red state. But as we know, Biden won Georgia in 2020 by less than 12,000 votes, and this poll in September showed Trump and Harris essentially tied. So why do you think Trump was able to pull away? Because now, 2 weeks out, he's 4 points ahead, which is slightly above the margin of error.
Yeah, I think it's because you're seeing a different kind of Donald Trump right now. I mean, look, Donald Trump's always going to be Donald Trump. He's going to say things, he's going to do things that aren't necessarily along with the mainstream. But that's what people like about him, I think. And I think what you're starting to see is working class folks coming behind him, and this realigning of the parties is happening a little more quickly. The richest zip codes in America are now Democratic, and working class folks around the country are becoming more and more Republican. And they can make fun of us and say we're not well educated. They can make fun of us and talk about us in a lot of different ways. And Kamala Harris almost did it. You know, she almost had her deplorable moment yesterday where she said, you know, Trump and his followers are the wrong kind of people for America. And then she caught herself and said, I don't mean his voters, I mean his followers. So I think that it's an interesting time, and that people are saying, are you better than you were 4 years ago? And also, if you want to turn the page from what? So I think the messages that the Harris campaign is putting out are not resonating. And Trump is talking about what people really care about. And the Harris campaign is hoping that people really care about abortion rights, because that's really what they're hanging their hat on right now.